Hello, good evening, everyone. You're welcome back to the channel. I hope we're having a wonderful time together listening to all these classes. Today, we are doing the part 2 of equipment that are used in the microbiology laboratory. And it's important for us to know all these equipments, know what they look like, know their functions, so that when we work in the laboratory, we can, get conversant with these equipments and use them very well. Today, we'll be previewing just about 8 equipments. This is the second part of our series on equipments that are used in the laboratory. Microbiology laboratory. Today, we'll be previewing just about 8 equipments that are used in the microbiology laboratory and what they are used for. The first equipment being the incubator. The incubator, it's an equipment, it looks like a box, and it's an equipment in which the humidity and the temperature of that box is controlled, and it's controlled in order to help and encourage microbial growth within media. So when we have samples on culture media, these culture media are put into these incubators, and then humidity and temperature is set at a fixed, a fixed value. Many a times we use 36.5 or 37 as the temperature because a lot of the microorganisms that we are interested in are microorganisms that have impact on human health. So a lot of times when we culture microorganisms and we put them in the incubators, we usually set the incubator to 37 or between 37 to 42 degrees. So the incubator is very important in the microbiology laboratory. Many a times it is very important and is used as an environment to help to improve, to encourage microbial growth. That is what the incubator does. Now we have the incubator. The second thing are the autoclaves. Autoclaves are important because they are also equipments that are used for the sterilization of different kinds of materials and equipments that are used in the microbiology laboratory. Now, the autoclaves are important because they help to sterilize materials, equipments, and they sterilize these equipments at very high temperatures, temperatures of about 121 degrees Celsius, and then at under also very high pressure, pressure of about 103 kilopascals. So autoclaves are very important. Any equipment that is used that needs to be sterilized has to be put into an autoclave. Many times also in the microbiology laboratory, while we are culturing our microorganisms, when we want to culture and prepare our culture media, many times we also put them in the autoclave to try to sterilize the media, to make sure that any organism that may have found its way into the media or the water we are using to prepare the media is destroyed by high heat, steam, and pressure. So autoclaves are important. So we have the incubators, we have the autoclaves, we have what we call a biosafety cabinet. Biosafety cabinets, that are interesting cabinets that have been designed to create an environment that is free from contamination. Within these biosafety cabinets, we can store a lot of materials, and we can also carry out a lot of experiments, a lot of analysis within the biosafety cabinet. The biosafety cabinet provides a controlled environment where materials can be handled, and this environment is free of contamination. Many big laboratories have these biosafety cabinets and they are used. You can see some biosafety cabinets have inputs where you can put your hands into and run many experiments in these safety cabinets. So this is also important. We also have the centrifuge. Centrifuges are popular. They are machines that can spin samples at very high temperature, at very high speeds. So they can spin samples at very high speeds. And what do we use centrifuge for? We use centrifuge to bring about separation in materials. A sample, if we want to separate a sample into its component parts, usually the parts that are denser, heavier, will settle down at the base of whatever we are centrifuging, the sample that has been centrifuged, and the lighter samples will be at the top. So we have a centrifuge. It's an equipment that is used in the microbiology lab to bring about separation of samples, and it spins samples at very, very high speed, sometimes 1,000, sometimes 5,000, sometimes 10,000 revolutions per minute. So this is a very high speed, and when it has spun those samples at that very high speed, it helps to separate them, the samples, into their component parts. So this is important. There's also a popular centrifuge that is called the hematocrit centrifuge. This is used by medical laboratory scientists and other scientists in the hospitals, and is also used for blood samples, to separate blood samples into their component parts and then to even give you PCV values. So this is important to note. Now we also have what we call an incubatory shaker. incubatory shaker. Now, two words have been joined together here, incubator and shaker. So it is an incubator, first of all, but within the incubator, it has a tray, or it has a means of shaking whatever sample that we keep in this incubatory shaker. Now, this is very important. There are some experiments that are carried out where we need homogeneity. We need to keep mixing whatever we are working with. We need to keep mixing it around. And to achieve this, we have this incubatory shaker. So it's an incubator, like I've earlier discussed incubators, where you can keep samples to encourage microbial growth. It will keep the sample at a particular temperature and humidity. And then that sample is being rotated, is being shaped, is being homogenized throughout the time that is within this equipment. We call that equipment an incubatory shaker. Some people call it a rotatory incubator, but incubatory shaker is a very well-known term. Now, we also have pH meters. pH meters are important. There are many different kinds of pH meters. There are handheld pH meters. There are many other different kinds. And the important thing is that it's used to, one, check for the pH of a sample, the solution, and then this pH, you can use the pH meter to check for the pH of the sample, the acidity or the alkalinity or neutrality of the sample. You can also use it to adjust pH. So if you want to adjust pH in a sample, make the pH either lower or make it higher by adding either acid or base, this can be done using the pH meter. The pH meter will help us to know the actual pH of the solution that we are working with. So either to check pH or adjust the pH, we make use of pH meters within the laboratory. This is important to know. We also have what we call a spectrophotometer. Spectrophotometer, and the most important or the most commonly used one is UV spectrophotometer. That's ultraviolet spectrophotometer, and this is used to measure concentration of microorganisms. It's used to measure concentration of microorganisms within samples. Now, usually what is being measured by the UV spectrophotometer is what we call optical density, OD. So it is being measured, and as it's measured, the more concentrated the microorganisms are within that sample, the higher value it will give you for the OD, because what we are measuring is the optical density using the spectrophotometer. This is also an important equipment. And lastly, within the microbiology laboratory, we usually have deep freezers and fridges. Now, we use all these. There are also equipments in the laboratory, and there's no standard laboratory you go to where you won't see deep freezers and fridges, because we use them to store a lot of our samples. We use them to store our microbial culture. We can use them to store some of our reagents, like reagents that we use for DNA extraction. We store them there. Our primers, we store them in the freezers. And many kits, assays, many different things that we do, kits, are stored in these freezers and fridges. So they are also important equipment that are used in the laboratory. I've run through about 8 very important equipment that are used in the laboratory. It's important to know these equipment: the incubator, the autoclaves, the biosafety cabinets, the centrifuge, incubatory shaker, pH meter, spectrophotometer, and refrigerators and freezers. Thank you for listening to this lecture, and have a wonderful day.